right, guys, welcome back to another video. So let's start off here with the Keystone report from New Zealand, which is going over their analysis and findings on the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, and basically whether they believe this deal is going to allow Microsoft to try and foreclose PlayStation and withhold Call of Duty from the platform. The decision date for New Zealand on whether they block or approve the merger is July 18th. But these are just their initial findings that they published yesterday. And it's a relatively long document. They go over their analysis, the information that they collected, how they came to their conclusion, all of that type of stuff. But we'll just quickly read over here essentially what they concluded within this article. And it sounds like this is good for Microsoft and for Xbox. It says here on number 9, it says, our analysis shows that for Microsoft to recoup all of the foregone profits on PlayStation, percentage of monthly active users on PlayStation in New Zealand who played Call of Duty for any amount of time would need to purchase an Xbox. This seems unrealistic, in particular given that the CMA survey of UK consumers found that only 24% of PlayStation Call of Duty gamers would switch to another device if Call of Duty were not available on Sony's console. So basically what they are saying here is if they were to not put Call of Duty on the PlayStation platform, they would need to get a majority of them to switch over to Xbox to actually be able to recoup the profits they would lose by taking the game off of the PlayStation platform, which would make absolutely no sense. Because the reality is there just won't be enough people that are going to switch over to Xbox if Call of Duty isn't there for them to be able to make back their money. And then they say here, based on this evidence, we conclude that Microsoft would not have a financial incentive to withhold Call of Duty from PlayStation in New Zealand. So they've come to the common sense conclusion, I would say, that they would have no incentive at all to take Call of Duty off PlayStation, even though we already know that Microsoft has promised Call of Duty to stay on the platform, the exact same game that is going to be released on the Xbox with no degradation of the quality of the product itself. This is, in my opinion, a very sensible, logical conclusion to come to. Just sit back and you think about it. There's no way they would be able to recoup all of the amount of people that they would lose money from by not having it on PlayStation, especially because Call of Duty makes the most amount of money every year. PlayStation is Activision's biggest customer, all that type of stuff. And then the other side of the coin here is Microsoft and Xbox know that they're going to continuously be making money off of PlayStation by keeping Call of Duty on their platform. And that's something that they probably want to keep doing, where you're going to have PlayStation essentially funding the growth of Xbox because of the profits that Microsoft and Xbox are going to be making from Call of Duty and from other Activision catalog games that come onto the platform. So this is the New Zealand Keystone report. It doesn't mean that they've made a decision yet, but July 18th is when that decision should come down. And if they've come to the conclusion that they have no incentive to take off Call of Duty in order to foreclose PlayStation, all that type of stuff that we've been hearing the other regulators talk about, there's probably a relatively good chance here that they are going to rule in favor. But again, you never know. Maybe they look at something like cloud. Maybe look at something else that isn't covered that to them is concerning enough to actually go ahead and try to block this deal like the CMA did. Now, let's jump over here to Final Fantasy 16. So Final Fantasy 16, at least for me, looked like it was a Final Fantasy that I would really, really enjoy. The combat, the story, the graphics looked pretty good. I played through the demo. It was a fun game. But there was a lot of controversy with Final Fantasy 16 when it was releasing, people thinking that they should have kept with like some older turn-based combat and really appealed to the JRPG fans out there that wanted that style of gameplay. And this came out as more of like a Devil May Cry game. Now, the sales for Final Fantasy 16 have not been exceptional, and people are looking at the fact that this is a PlayStation exclusive. And you look at Final Fantasy 15, which was a multi-platform game, and it sold more than Final Fantasy 16 in a shorter period of time. So you would have to question whether Square Enix is regretting their decision to actually keep this game as a PS5 exclusive. And there's some more bad news here when it actually comes to the sales of Final Fantasy 16, as in the second week after its release, the sales have plummeted by 90% in Japan, where you would think it would be selling like crazy and be very popular. Although again, Final Fantasy is very mainstream. It sells well pretty much everywhere. That's why I think if this game was to ever released on Xbox at the same time as PS5, it would still sell on Xbox. It wouldn't be a game that doesn't go without people buying it up. Now, they say here that fell 90%, and they sold just over 336,000 physical copies in Japan in the first week. And on the second week, it just sold 37,763 units. And also in the first week where they sold that 336,000 copies, it wasn't even the best-selling game in Japan. The best-selling game was a Nintendo Switch exclusive called Master Detective Archives Rain Code. So it's a massive drop. And this isn't don't take my word for this. You actually have in a Bloomberg article, Toyo Securities analyst Hideki Yasuda saying, this is a very poor result, and it will be impossible to increase sales further unless the price is significantly lowered. Most of the failure is a result of the pre-publicity and the actual game itself being too far removed from the Final Fantasy of the past, leaving consumers behind. So I do think that is a major reason why some people just don't have any interest in it. Probably, maybe they don't like the Devil May Cry series. They don't like that action combat. For me, I love that stuff, so it's perfect for me. But for a lot of people out there, it's just not their style of game. But you also have to call into question as to what these numbers would look like if this game was released multi-platform on day one, released on PC and released on the Xbox. I would bet the numbers would be far better than a huge 90% drop in the actual sales in the second week. I'm not saying that it would be the best selling Final Fantasy of all time, but it would definitely have helped their overall sales. So interesting here, because everything was pointing to Final Fantasy 16 being one of the best Final Fantasy games, just from the looks of it, from the reactions, from the demo when it came out. There's a lot of excitement from there, and it just seems like it was all for naught, as the sales right now just aren't sufficient enough. And we know how Square Enix looks at their success of games. They have a very high bar, or at least they had that with their Western studios before they sold them off. And we'll see if it's the same type of result from Square Enix when they talk about this game, when they express whether they're excited, whether they are happy with the actual sales numbers for Final Fantasy 16. And finally, some things off here. Let's talk about Xbox exclusivity, Hi-Fi Rush. We know the whole thing with Redfall, where there was a PlayStation version of the game. They canceled the PlayStation version of the game after Xbox had purchased Bethesda. And people are wondering, was this the same thing with Hi-Fi Rush? Because in my opinion, Hi-Fi Rush is a Game of the Year candidate. It is one of the best games I've played this year. And it's a game that if you don't have an Xbox, I would actually consider picking up an Xbox literally just to play this game, plus obviously everything else that is going to be coming out onto the platform. And that's how much I actually enjoyed it, or just played on PC or whatever. But in terms of exclusivity, when it comes to Hi-Fi Rush, this wasn't the same scenario as Redfall. The developer here, John Johannes, said that they didn't take off a PS5 version. They actually hadn't selected the platforms before Xbox had purchased them up. It says here, speaking with GameSpot during an interview at the Anime Expo 2023, Johannes stated that when Microsoft purchase happened, it was late into the game's development and the team was undecided on platforms right as this was happening. And this was like, okay, Xbox, that was easy. It's not that we had something working and we just shelved it or anything like that. And he goes on here and continues and says here, legitimately, there was no change. We just kept making it, and we didn't get any feedback from Microsoft in the sense of changing something. At that point, realistically, our game was pretty much solidified into what it was. It was kind of finishing it up, and everyone who saw it thought it looked cool. So if you're on PlayStation, they didn't take this game off of the PS5. They actually hadn't selected the platforms. And then when Xbox came in, it just made it easier for them, obviously, because it's first party and they were going to keep this game exclusive. But I'm going to end the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.